All right, y'all. Today is officially the finale of the Diary of Anne Frank play. Where we left off last was Mrs. Frank, who's normally calm, cool, and collected, is very upset because Mr. Van Daan has been caught stealing food. So she's been trying to get Mr. Frank to kick him out of the annex. Tension is at an all-time high. Here we go.
Give this to me. She'll find you a place. Mother, you're not putting Peter out. Peter hasn't done anything. He'll stay, of course. When I say I must protect the children, I mean Peter, too.
I'd have to go if Father goes. Mr. Van Daan comes from the bathroom. Mrs. Van Daan hurries to him and takes him to the couch. Then she gets water from the sink to bathe his face.
He's no father to you, that man. He doesn't know what it is to be a father.
I wouldn't feel right. I couldn't stay.
Very well, then. I'm sorry. No, Peter, no!
Peter goes into his room, closing the door after him. Anne turns back to her mother, crying.
I don't care about the food. They can have mine. I don't want it. Only don't send them away. It'll be daylight soon. They'll be caught. Please, Mother. They're not going now. They'll stay here until Meek finds them a place. But one thing I insist on. You must never come down here again.
Wow.
You must never come to this room where the food is stored. We'll divide what we have, an equal share for each.
Dussel hurries over to get a sack of potatoes from the food safe. Mrs. Frank goes on to Mrs. Van Daan.
You can cook it here and take it up to him.
Dussel brings the sack of potatoes back to the center table.
Oh, no. No. We haven't sunk so far that we're going to fight over a handful of rotten potatoes.
Dividing the potatoes into piles. Mrs. Frank, Mr. Frank, Margot, Anne, Peter, Mrs. Van Daan, Mr. Van Daan, myself, Mrs. Frank. The buzzer sounds in Meep's signal. It's Meep! He hurries over, getting his overcoat and putting it on.
At this hour, it is trouble.
As he starts down to unbolt the door. I beg you, don't let her see a thing like this. Counting without stopping. Anne, Peter, Mrs. Van Daan, Mr. Van Daan, myself.
Stop it! Stop it!
Mr. Frank, Margot, Anne, Peter, Mrs. Van Daan,
Sorting
Mr. Van Daan,
potatoes.
myself, Mrs. Frank.
You're keeping the big ones for yourself. All the big ones.
Oh my gosh.
Look the size of that. And that.
Dussel continues on with his dividing. Peter, with his shirt and trousers on, comes from his room.
Stop it! Stop it!
We hear Meep's excited voice speaking to Mr. Frank below.
Mr. Frank, the most wonderful news.
Good news.
The invasion has begun.
Go on, tell them, tell them. Meep comes running up the steps, ahead of Mr. Frank.
Before we hear the good news, one thing that I want to point out here is it can be really dangerous for the Van Daans to get kicked out. So one thing that could happen is they could be caught. Another thing is that if Mr. Van Daan or Mrs. Van Daan is feeling really spiteful, they could actually tell on the Franks and give them away. Meep could get caught looking for another place. So it's no wonder that Margot and Anne are pretty upset about Mrs. Franks saying they need to leave. All right, let's hear the good news.
She has a man's raincoat on over her nightclothes and a bunch of orange-colored flowers in her hand.
Did you hear that, everybody? Did you hear what I said? The invasion has begun. The invasion.
They all stare at me, unable to grasp what she is telling them. Peter is the first to recover his wits. Where?
When? When, Meep? It began early this morning.
As she talks on, the realization of what she has said begins to dawn on them. Everyone goes crazy. A wild demonstration takes place. Mrs. Frank hugs Mr. Van Daan.
Oh, Mr. Van Daan, did you hear that?
Dussel embraces Mrs. Van Daan. Peter grabs a frying pan and parades around the room, beating on it, singing the Dutch national anthem.
Now that's some happiness.
Anne and Margot follow him, singing, weaving in and out among the excited grown-ups. Margot breaks away to take the flowers from Meep and distribute them to everyone. While this pandemonium is going on, Mrs. Frank tries to make herself heard above the excitement.
How do you know? The radio. The BBC. They said they landed on the coast of Normandy.
The British?
British, Americans, French, Dutch, Poles, Norwegians, all of them. More than 4,000 ships. Churchill spoke. And General Eisenhower. D-Day, they call it.
So this happened in June. We know that our families have been in hiding now for a long time. So really fast, more information about D-Day. I wrote myself a little sticky note so I'd remember everything to say to you guys. So it's actually 6,000 plus ships. All of these vessels left the British coast and crossed the Channel from France and landed on the beach of Normandy. It's called D-Day. 13,000 planes dropped bombs and parachutists. So it took a total of 2 months, but by August, so several months later, the Allies, so that's, Dutch, French, Poles, Norwegians, they liberated much of France and were on their way to reclaim Western Germany. And Amsterdam is just west of Germany. So this is a really, really good piece of good news that the Germans are losing the war. So that's why they're so excited.
Thank God it's come.
At last! I'm going to tell Mr. Crawler. This will be better than any blood transfusion.
What part of Normandy did they land, did they say?
Normandy. That's all I know now. I'll be up the minute I hear some more.
She goes hurriedly out. What did I tell you? What did I tell you? Mrs. Frank indicates that he has forgotten to bolt the door after me.
Oops.
He hurries down the steps. Mr. Van Daan, sitting on the couch, suddenly breaks into a convulsive sob. Everybody looks at him, bewildered.
Whoa.
Pootie! Pootie, what is it? What happened?
Please, I'm so ashamed. Mr. Frank comes back up the steps. Oh, for God's sake!
Don't, Pootie. It doesn't matter now.
Didn't you hear what Meep said? The invasion has come. We're going to be liberated. This is a time to celebrate. He embraces Mrs. Frank and then hurries to the cupboard and gets the cognac and a glass. To steal bread from children.
Yep, that was messed up.
We've all done things that we're ashamed of. Look at me, the way I've treated Mother. So mean and horrid to her. No, Annika, no.
Anne runs to her mother, putting her arms around her.
That's a big change.
Mother, I was awful.
Not like me. No one is as bad as me.
Agree.
Stop it now. Let's be happy.
So they're actually going to forgive Mr. Van Daan for what he did because this news is such a big deal.
Giving Mr. Van Daan a glass of cognac. Here. Schnapps. L'chaim. Van Daan takes the cognac. They all watch him. He gives them a feeble smile. Anne puts up her fingers in a V for victory sign. As Van Daan gives an answering V sign, they are startled to hear a loud sob from behind them. It is Mrs. Frank, stricken with remorse.
Guilt.
She is sitting on the
Feeling
other
bad.
side of the room.
What I think of the terrible things I said.
Mr. Frank, Anne, and Margot hurry to her, trying to comfort her. Mr. Van Daan brings her his glass of cognac. No, you were right.
That I should speak that way to you. Our friends, our guests.
As they are comforting her, the lights dim out. The curtain falls.
We're all in much better spirits these days.
Gonna pause right there and I will continue this in the second video.